Welcome back to another video. In this video we are going to study slider. So let's start by creating a new file and name it as slider playground. So slider actually allows us to select value from a bounded range, and the default range is 0.0 and 1.0. So let's just see how the slider looks. So let's start by having a v stack, and then we can type slider, and we have all these initializer that we can use, but you may notice one thing, that we have to use this value, and this value actually accepts a binding, and that binding is a floating point. So in order to work with slider we have to provide a binding. So in order to provide a binding we have to have a state. So let's create a state and maybe name it as value, and its type should be double. Let's just give it a default value of 0.0, and now we can use our slider because we have a state. And let's just provide this value a binding, and we know that in order to use a binding we have to use $sign and then write the name of our state, and the name of our state is value. And let's just give maybe a padding to whole v stack. Now we have this slider control on screen. I can just drag this slider thumb. Let's have a text at the top so that we can see the value for this slider. And maybe have a font of headline. Now as we are dragging or we are changing this slider value, you may notice that this value is increasing. So this is how a basic slider looks like. One thing interesting we can do with slider is maybe have a box in here, like a frame of width and height of 100, and then let's just have a background, and for the background let's just have maybe color green. And now for the opacity of this box, let's use this value. So now as we are going to change, so you may notice that we cannot see the box on screen, and that's because the default value for our slider is 0. So 0.0 is like no visibility. So let's just maybe have it at default value at half. So now we have our default value as 0.5, and that is actually 50% of the opacity. And now as we are going to change, our box color is going to change with it. This is not a very great or useful example of how we are going to use slider in our real apps, but that's just for the understanding. In real apps the slider may be used with like in a music player or something. So if you want we can actually change this range for the slider. So let's just have another slider in here, and for the value let's provide a value, and for the range, okay, let's just maybe have another value so that we don't disturb the first one. So maybe like slider 2 value something, and yeah, and for the range we can now let's just have maybe something in between 0 and 100. So now we have a second slider with a bigger range. We can actually copy these values to display slider 2 values on screen. And now yeah, so you may notice that slider 2 is now has a bigger range. And if you want, we can actually change the steps. Step is like the value that is like, instead of changing it by a point or something, you can change it maybe like 10 points. So now we have our value as 10, 20, 30, 40, 60. So yeah, and we can actually change this color of this progress, I would say. So let's just provide a tint of maybe yellow. So now our, instead of this blue, we will have a yellow bar or a yellow line as we progress on this slider. So we can also provide uh, minimum and maximum value label for this slider. So the first thing we have to do is we have to provide the uh, this is actually the label. The label is not displayed in the iOS platform, but it is actually used for the accessibility. So let's just have, we have a text in here that's maybe like say select a range. You can name it anything, but it's not visible on the screen because it's just how things are for the iOS platform or the iPhone. Maybe on Mac OS or a different platform, this label is visible, but it's not on the iPhone. So let's just have a minimum value label, and this label is actually accepting a view. So you can have maybe an image here, a v tag, h tag, so anything that conforms to a view. For now, you will just have a simple text in here that maybe says 0. So, and as we are using the minimum, we have to use this maximum minimum value label. So let's just have 100 for the maximum. Now we have our minimum and maximum values, and we can also change the uh, appearance of this minimum and maximum values by using this foreground color. And let's just have maybe green for them. So yeah, so this tint is actually for changing the this progress color, and the foreground color is used to change the color for the minimum and the maximum value label. So now we have a different labels, and yeah, so this is how this slider is used in SwiftUI. So that's it for this video.